this is probably my best game so far. I played like a 2750 and I destroyed these 2200. So let's see what happened. First of all, I play d4, I'm an e4 player. I'm not going to play d4, guys, don't worry. d4 is too bad. So e4, e6, he played my beautiful French. Now, I played d4 and he replied with d5. I think one really good way to try to punish the French is the tie rush, so knight on d2. And now he replied with the move c5, which is obviously theory. Now we take the pawn on d5, they take back. You could also take with the queen, which leads to different lines. But if you play the tie rush, white is always slightly better and he always have a pleasant position. So he decided to take with the pawn and now knight on f3. At this point he played knight on f6, which makes sense, and now we can give a check. What is the point of giving the check? The point is that I'm gaining a time on my opponent and I want to castle as soon as possible. Now, you can play knight on f6 or bishop on d7. If you play knight on f6, we just castle. If you play bishop on d7, as he did, we can give a check. So, queen on e2. We give a check and now we pose some problem to our opponent. Because what do you want to do? You want to play queen on e7 or you want to play bishop on e7? If you play queen on e7, we can just castle. The point is that after you take and we take back with the bishop, let's say you play knight on c6, which is the best move, we play rook on e1, and after you castle short, we have this position where white, I will say, is slightly better because of the structure. These pawns are weak, and we play the endgame. But if you don't want to play the endgame, you can play the move bishop on e7. So after bishop on e7, we can castle, and now you should castle as soon as possible, otherwise we can pose some problem. The move is in fact castle, but my opponent decided to play c4. Now c4, I know for a fact that is a blunder. I played this position many times, so I know the ideas. c4 basically wastes a time, because if you do not castle now, I have the move bishop take on d7. What is the point? The point is that after the knight takes, or the queen, probably the knight was better too, but I don't know, both are fine. After queen takes, for example, I have the move rook on e1. And you cannot castle. That's why you should castle as soon as possible. Because now, if you castle, I'm just going to win the bishop. And that's it. And what are you going to do? Let's say you play this, I'm just going to take the queen, because the rook is defended. So this doesn't even work, and I just win a piece. So you cannot castle. My opponent, for this reason, decided to play knight on c6, which is the best move and makes sense. Because now, you could eventually castle long, and you could even castle short, because the knight is defending the bishop. For this reason, I played a really, really good move. I didn't know it was the best. I came up with this on the board, but yeah, I thought it was pretty good. Knight on e5. What is the point? Well, the point is that you cannot castle, because your queen is hanging. And let's say you move the queen somewhere, you're still going to take the knight, and you're still going to have the same problem, that you cannot castle short or long, because you're still going to win the bishop. So you could take my knight, and after that I will take with the queen, same problem. But you cannot take the pawn on d4. And I saw why, and I'm pretty happy I found this. If you take the pawn on d4, it's actually lost. Why? Well, if I take the queen now, I'm not winning. I might be losing, because you can take my queen with check. After that, I have to take with the rook. My knight is still hanging, you can win it. And as you can see, my opponent is up a pawn. Although I saw a beautiful in-between move, which looks basically unplayable. And that's why I thought knight on e5 was pretty good, because it is also a tricky move. I can play the move queen on e3. What is the point? Well, I'm attacking the knight and the queen at the same time. The queen cannot defend the knight, so you cannot move the queen and defend the knight somehow. If you move the queen, you lose a piece. But if you take the pawn on c2, thinking that you still have the same thing, because my queen is hanging, you actually lose the game. Because after I take the queen, and you take mine, the difference is that my queen is on another square, and this doesn't come with check. But guess what comes with check? Knight take on f6. You have to take it, with the bishop or with the pawn, and after you take it, I'm up a piece. As you can see, he has a bishop, but I have a bishop and a knight. Now, why did I decide to take with the pawn? Well, the reason is pretty simple, and is because otherwise, if I take with the rook, I have this pin, but he has two really strong pawns. So if I take with the pawn, I'm covering the d4 square, and this is pretty important. He replied with bishop on c5, attacking the pawn because he's pinned to the king, so it is a weakness, it makes sense. And now I can move the knight, and I free the bishop. My plan is to connect the rooks, and I mean win, because I'm up a piece, so in a way or another I'm going to win. He moved the king in order to connect the rooks, and now bishop on d2, rook on g8, and knight on d4. What is the point? I'm avoiding any sort of tactic on this pawn, and I want to open the f-file because this pawn is pretty weak. So my idea is trying to double rooks on the f-file and win this pawn. He decided to play rook on e8, and now, as I said, rook on f1. You don't have any sort of tactic, this pawn is well defended. If you take this way, I just take it back. If you infiltrate, I have rook on f2, so I'm fine. Rook on g6, defending the pawn, and now rook on f2. What is the point? I'm defending all the second rank, which is pretty important, and I'm also threatening to double rooks. The fact is that this knight is pretty strong, and is preventing the rook from coming on e6, so this pawn is not really easy to defend. Pawn on e6, then to have some counterplay on the queen side, which makes sense, and I decided to double rooks. Now, bishop on e7 defends the pawn, but as you can see, it is a pretty passive move. Now, apparently the best move is rook on f5, because if you try to defend the pawn, I also have the check. But I decided to play knight on f5 instead, which is also pretty good, although yes, I have to say that rook on f5 was better. The point is that I'm putting pressure on these important squares, and I want to free this diagonal for the bishop, so my plan might be to play bishop on c3, targeting the pawn, and at the same time, after I move the bishop, I can also open the d-file. So this is my plan, because as you can see, my opponent is plenty of weaknesses. This is weak, 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 weak. So bishop on c3, targeting the pawn, and now b5. You shouldn't be scared about this because it's not threatening anything. Like, even if you manage to play a5, I can just play a3, and you're not going anywhere. So rook on d1 was my point, putting pressure on this pawn, which is pretty difficult to defend too, because now you would have to defend it with the king, and the king is an horrible defender. So king on c6, rook on d2. How are you going to defend the pawn? Well, you can't, because after you play rook on g5, I can just take it. At the same time, I win a pawn and then defend the knight. Also, this pawn is not under attack because it's defended. So as you can see, my pieces are perfectly coordinated, and I'm slowly going to win every pawn because they are too weak. Rook on e6, with the idea that if I take the bishop, we're going to win the knight. But you need to be careful while doing this thing, because if you leave a piece hanging, there might be some tactic or some combination. And what I found was really good, which is the move h4. What is the point of h4? If you move the rook, my knight is not hanging, and I can win the bishop. So he played rook on h5, but now g4, and you have to take my knight, otherwise you just lose a piece. So he decided to take, and he resigned. It's plus 10 because after I take with the pawn, your rook is under attack, and your bishop is under attack too. If you go back and win the bishop, you lose everything. So yeah, it makes sense that he resigned. So yeah, this was a pretty good game. It shows you how at high level, even one mistake, one loss of a move can cause you to lose the game. Because my opponent was basically lost from, I would say, let me see. I would say from, yeah, move 8. Move 8, he played c4, and this is basically, I mean, I wouldn't say lost, but practically speaking is really difficult to defend, because you're not going to castle, you're going to have difficulties developing your pieces. So if you play the French, You need to be careful with the tire rush. It is a pretty good line, and most importantly, you need to know theory pretty well. You can't even waste the time. So yeah, that's it for today, guys, and see you soon with the next video.